Um, so my daughter went to school in Savannah, and we went up to Charleston quite often. I'm jealous of you guys down there right now. They're two of my favorite cities.
Alexa, stop.
I tend to be in Hartford quite a bit because one of our biggest clients is a little aircraft engine manufacturer that's up in Hartford. So anyway, so I'm often there live, but it's good to be here on Zoom. While we do work for a bunch of big companies, I also love doing work with independent inventors. Mary, can you maybe mute? I think we're getting feedback from you. So I love working with independent inventors more because you guys, you can actually see, thank you, Mary. You can actually, we can actually get positive feedback when we get you guys a good patent and get you going somewhere. In my career, I've probably had 5 or 6 independent inventors that went from just a person to being very, very wealthy off of their ideas. I mean, as you guys all know, it is an uphill struggle. And for the most part, it's a lot of hard work on the part of the inventor to get out and sell their ideas. But I've never seen anyone as successful as Chun Ning, who is the inventor of the rainbow loom. We're going to assume you guys all know basic patent, trademark, and copyright stuff, but if there's something that you don't get, maybe drop a link in chat and I'm monitoring that. John, you want to bring up the visual?
Yep.
And maybe scroll through down to the picture of Chun and Fen. So this is Chun Ing and his wife Fen Ing. They were born in Malaysia. They were childhood or high school sweethearts there. They immigrated to the United States. Chun got a job. Chun got a job in an automobile company. When their kids were like 13 or so, he was teaching them a game he used to use in Malaysia where he would weave rubber bands into links and they would make jump ropes out of them. But it turns out his fingers were now too fat to actually weave these, they're tiny little rubber bands, and his fingers were now too fat to do that. So he started working on a loom that could do it. And his kids and his kids' friends loved it once he got something together. And it seemed like it was really just a great idea. And he spoke to Fen about the idea of going forward with it, maybe giving prototypes, maybe trying to get it out into stores. But there was a problem. They had $8,000 total, and that was their kids' college fund, which, of course, they have 2 daughters. $8,000 wasn't enough anyway. But they rolled the dice, and they invested the $8,000 in getting a bunch of prototypes and trying to get it out. You go to the next one, John. So, and then the next one even. So the rainbow loom, it's a loom where you turn tiny rubber bands into a bracelet. I could never really do it. My wife is a textile engineer. She does it. I think, John, you can do it, right?
Simple ones.
You've made some ones. But at the end of it, when you get done making the bracelet, there's a little plastic clip that you have to use to clip the ends together to hold it together. And that's something I'll explain in a little bit, the relevance of that. Next one, John. So here's the bracelet. And if you remember back like 2012, 2013, 14, these were everywhere on like preteen and young teen kids. They anyway, the next one. So the rainbow loom, this is drawings from the patents. The rainbow loom, it was a series of rows of pins, and it was multi-piece. So you could reconfigure it. Like if you look to the left, there are 3 rows of pins and they're staggered. And if you look to the right, there are, I think, 6 rows of pins and they're aligned. And that ability to reconfigure became like really a major issue in the patent lawsuits that we got into. Next one, John. On the box is this photograph, and this photograph will become important when we start talking about copyrights. John's going to talk about the trademark and copyright issues that came up. It was so low budget. This is Chun and Fen and their daughter's hands, and I think, just counting, there's got to be someone else's hands in there, but to save money, they took a picture of their own hands, and it's on their box. Next one, John. So it started off, it was in small stores. And then in 2012, they tried to get into Toys R Us. Toys R Us said, no, they're not interested. But they got it into a chain of small toy stores called Learning Express. And part of the problem Learning Express decided was that no one knew how to make rubber bands on a loom. No one had ever made a loom for weaving rubber bands before. So Learning Express started giving classes on Saturday. And it took off. And Learning Express, there's a lot of them in a lot of states. It took off. And with that success, Chun was able to get into the craft store Michaels and get an agreement to put them in every Michaels across the country. And there's something like 1,300 Michaels. But part of that agreement was that he couldn't sell it to any other big box stores for a year. And he could still sell it to the small toy stores, but not to big box stores. And that raised a whole lot of problems for him, as we'll get into. In 2013, it was the biggest toy in America. 2014, it was the biggest toy in the world. And then it slowed down. But while it was hot, it was crazy hot. Like, you may recall Jimmy Kimmel. Every night for, it seems like months, every night Jimmy Kimmel led off his show with rainbow loom. He was getting chunks of fabric woven by kids from rainbow looms, and then he would weave them together until he eventually made a suit. And if you go back to that first photograph or if you remember back to that first photograph of Chun and Fen, Jimmy Kimmel at the end auctioned the suit off for charity, and Chun actually bought it, and that's the picture they're wearing, or that's the suit they're wearing in that earlier picture. Well, with all of this success, we started to see copiers. At first, the first thing that we noticed, go to the next one, John, was there were 3 big companies in New Jersey. There's about 6 companies in New Jersey that monitor everything that goes on social media. It looks for what's popular, and what they'll do then is they will come out with their own knockoffs versions of those products. They are slick, and they're smart enough to come up with a way to avoid what they perceive, or at least give themselves an argument that they don't infringe a patent. So if you remember, I mentioned the rainbow loom was multi-piece and you could reconfigure it. There were 3 looms: the crazy loom, the fun loom, and the banda loom, and they were all one piece, so they could not be reconfigured. And their argument was that Chun's patents only covered reconfigurable. At first, the first 2 that hit were the bottom 2, the crazy loom and the fun loom. And I remember, like, when you work with someone like Chun and Fen, they are great clients to work with. I mean, it's a human being that's having this incredible success, and they're just really great people beyond that. And but they were distraught because they were seeing all these people copying their ideas, and they had gotten a patent, and they couldn't believe that people were copying their ideas. And I remember we had like a particularly hard meeting with him where he was really just kind of beat up about it when we only knew of the crazy loom and the fun loom. And I have a Nordic Track ski machine in my basement. And when I come home from work sometimes, in order to kind of relieve some stress and get a workout in, I'll turn on TV and watch something while I Nordic Track. Well, that night, while I'm still distraught from our meeting with Chun, I'm watching TV and a commercial comes on for a 3rd one, the banda loom, the top one. These companies in New Jersey, they all have TV commercials. They're all what's called as seen on TV. And they put commercials on because Walmart and other big stores will put you at the front of the store if you're as seen on TV, if you've got TV commercials. And, Chun wanted Chun thought that the patent would give him a lightning bolt, but we don't have lightning bolts. I mean, it takes a while to enforce patents, but we sued all three of those companies. And if you look at the next one, as I say, Chun, this is Christmas 2013. This is Toys R Us, the hot 15 toys of the year. Bottom left, John, maybe you could move the cursor to it, but that's the Crazy Loom. It's one of those two. The Fun Loom was also in Toys R Us. The Michaels agreement prevented Chun from selling to Walmart or Toys R Us. But both of those companies, they monitor what's going on. And one of the things they do, it's called false hits. So say if a kid back then went on walmart.com and typed in rainbow loom trying to buy one, they would get a message that says nothing meets your search criteria. So that kid would have to go look somewhere else. But Walmart marketing would get a report on that, what they call a false hit or a failed search. And when you get enough of them, then they knew that might be a product they want to consider getting. As I say, Chun couldn't supply either of them because of the Michaels agreement. But in depositions and lawsuits, I spoke to buyers from each of those companies. Anyway, Walmart told me they had never seen anything with as many false hits as the rainbow loom had for it. And so, I mean, it was just this huge thing. They had to have something. They couldn't not have something. Toys R Us, they got, as I say, Crazy Loom and Fun Loom. Walmart got Bandaloom and I believe Fun Loom, but I don't recall exactly. But Walmart at least had enough class also. They worked with Chun to find a licensee in the United States that made a one-piece loom called the Wonder Loom. So Walmart at least tried to do what was right. It's a weird place. Like the craft side of it got the Wonder Loom from Chun. The toy side of it got the knockoffs. Right after that, the next thing that really hit was what I'll call garbage. And go to the next one. So, I mean, if you look at this, there's like the Goody Loom, the Cool Rainbow Loom, the Infinity Loom, the everything you could imagine loom. It was garbage. It was all over Alibaba, all over Amazon, all over all sorts of web pages everywhere. But if you look at them, almost all of them have a rainbow image, at least on their cover, or a rainbow kind of look to them. And John will get into what that did for us to help us. This stuff was garbage. Like my wife and I were flying out of the Detroit airport at one point, and we got I went into a toy store and they had one of these things there, and I bought it. And I'm on the airplane typing to my secretary, trying to get a cease and desist letter to mail to that toy store about the garbage they're selling. Meanwhile, my wife sets up the loom and starts trying to use it to make a rubber band bracelet, and it shatters into like shards of plastic. I'm sorry. So this is the way the garbage stuff, and it's a kid's toy. So shards of plastic is really not a cool thing for a kid's toy to turn into real quickly. The garbage stuff, they were all reconfigurable, so they had no argument on patents. But on the other hand, they tended to be in smaller numbers, so it's a little bit more difficult to sue all of them. Next one, John. One of them actually went so far as to copy his family's hands on the side of their box, which is to me, this was like all of the indignities that Chun dealt with during all of this. This to me somehow just struck me as the worst. I mean, he's copied, these people have copied his daughter and his wife's hands onto this box for no reason. I mean, I don't know that particular image was particularly, selling looms, but it did help. Next one, John. So someone just asked, can I share the names of the companies that copied them? If you Google Rainbow Loom or Chun's design patent infringement, they'll tell you the things. Or if you just Google generally New Jersey companies that make consumer products and as seen on TV, there's about 6 of them. Only 3 of them got into this with us. Every mall Christmas 2013 had a kiosk like this. And this is a really wild one, because if you look at it, it says Crazy Loom, which means they were not only knocking off Chun's patented design, they were also knocking off the Crazy Loom knockoff products trademark. And these were in every mall, and Chun was getting flooded with photographs from friends who would be in the mall in, Delaware or Arizona or wherever, saying, "Hey, this is in this mall. Why can't you stop this?" Then the final thing that really hit was, out of China came these counterfeits, and they were so good, I couldn't really tell from the box. I couldn't tell what was real and what was not. John will get into some of the subtle differences. Oh, I guess we have them on this part. Maybe go to the next one, John. So once you're inside the box, you can tell the counterfeit from the authentic, because the authentic, if you look to the bottom, there is a sort of a patent number, I believe, and an indicator of who owns it. But by that point, you're in the box. So, I mean, you've already bought the infringing product. So that's not a whole lot of relief to Chun, that people, after they spent their money and he didn't get their money, that they got an infringing product. Anyway, so that's where we were at, maybe mid 2013. And John's going to start talking about, or talk about, some of the efforts we started to begin turning the tide. Thank you.
Yep. Yeah. So Ted's given a kind of an introduction, and we had patents, and we also got trademarks and copyrights on things. One of the first things we trademarked was the name, of course, Rainbow Loom. That's pretty straightforward. But then as these counterfeiters started coming out, we started realizing that, boy, the rest of the stuff we should copyright. So we copyrighted the packaging, and then we copyrighted that photograph by itself, outside of the packaging. Because trademarks and copyrights are a little bit more straightforward to enforce, and it gives you some other avenues to pursue enforcing against people. This box here is the original Rainbow Loom. It's not the counterfeit, but you can see that if we go back to the other one, if you recall, the counterfeit used the exact same packaging. Now I think we all know that once you get a trademark or a copyright, you get a registration, and you get a registration number. And that brings us, so you can see that these two parts, the counterfeit part, infringes the trademark clearly, and it infringes the copyrights very clearly without any issue. So with trademark and copyright, to enforce it, it's, you're not doing claim interpretation or anything like that. You're just simply, there it is. It's very easy to enforce it. But one of the big problems is, it's by the time you're enforcing patents or trying to enforce these things, by the time it's in the country, it's in the store, it's too late. The damage has been done for Chun, because those are sales that he won't make. So we needed to figure out a way to stop this stuff before it got into the stores. And we found that, the US government, Customs and Border Protection, they have this program where you can register intellectual property once you've gotten rights in it. They'll let you register trademarks and copyrights. There's a minimal fee. I think it's less than $200. And once you have like a trademark or a copyright, you can register it with the Border Protection Agency, and they will look for things that infringe, and they will stop those things at the border without any action on your part. Now, the downside is they'll stop it at the border and they'll prevent it from coming in, but you don't get any kind of financial, you don't get any damages or anything like that. But the real battle that we were facing at this time was stopping the things from getting in the store. So with the trademark and the copyright, we were able to register for this process. And we started having the government agencies, every single airport or port in the United States have border protection agents that are tuned in to stopping things that are infringing intellectual property and that are recorded under this program. So we started taking advantage of that for the US. This also became a worldwide phenomenon. So we found that Europe and other countries had similar programs. So we did the same thing in Europe, where we would register the trademark and the copyrights, and let the government agencies do their job. They have a vested interest and they want to stop counterfeiters from coming into the country. So here's a couple of, this is an example of an EP application that you fill out for registered IP rights. And that puts the border agents there on notice, and they start grabbing things. So one of the good things about this is they'll grab things, and you'll see on the right-hand side is a notice of detention. So what they do is you don't necessarily get damages, but what they do is they notify you once they stop a group of people. So you can start building information on who's infringing, where is this stuff coming from. And this is an instance where they stopped 100 parts coming into the country. Now 100 doesn't sound like a lot, but it gave us information to where they were going and where they were coming from. And then when you start seeing this would start happening on a daily basis, where we would get several notices, sometimes 5 and 6 notices overnight of places that things were stopped. This is the copyright registration for that picture that's on the box. Again, copyright registration is a great way to protect your intellectual property there, because there's simply no argument. That part that Ted showed that had this picture on it, they had no argument at all of non-infringement. I mean, it was very clear that picture was there and that was it. So then it just becomes a damages issue, which makes things much easier and more streamlined. So this is kind of back to the example. This is that box. You can see the rainbow loom box, and then you can see on the right-hand side the infringing box. And they use the hands, and they try to get creative by changing the box appearance. They created a kind of a rainbow appearance without saying rainbow, right? They've got different colors across it, and they did try a little bit, but then they put the hands on there, so that kind of sunk them for this effort. This is an example of a notice that we would get from the U.S. Customs agencies, where every time they grab something, we would get a notice here, and we were started building up a database of knowledge of where these things were coming from. You can see here that this notice provides information that the exporter was from Shenzhen in Hong Kong. So we'd provide that information and spread that and get that to the other border and protection agents, so they would know where to look for things. If things were coming from this place, they would know to take a look at it and make sure it wasn't infringing them. The other thing that started happening for us is the Border Protection Agency, once they knew that we were a resource to give them information, they would start contacting us about things. Like this is an instance where they contacted us, and they looked at this box and they said, wow, it looks like it's the same thing, but it doesn't say rainbow loom and it doesn't have your hands on it. Is this an infringing mark? Well, a border protection agent may not know the intricacies of trademark law, but there's a doctrine in trademark law where you can't just replace a word with a symbol and get around trademark infringement, which is here's what they did. They removed the word rainbow and they added the symbol rainbow, and they still have the word loom bands on there. So technically they're infringing trademark law, and we would have very good arguments to take them to court for trademark infringement. But we didn't have to, because what the border protection guys wanted was they wanted some reasonable basis where they could seize these goods. So they wrote to us, and we were able to give them information that they could use as a reasonable basis to grab this stuff and stop it from coming in the country and making it to stores. We had several instances of this where border protection agents would contact us and ask those questions. Is this infringing? Is this not infringing? And more often than not, we could give them a basis to enable them to grab those things. So in that way, we were able to expand his trademark rights and copyright rights by being a resource for the Customs and Border Patrol agents. The other thing we noticed is, the one thing about this is, if you don't have instructions for this device, I mean, if you don't have instructions, it's a plastic part with a bunch of pins that are sticking up. You won't know what to do with it. So you have to have instructions. So we also copyrighted the instructions here. So now they made the rainbow loom instructions are on the bottom, and infringing instructions are on the top. And you'll notice they changed some of the pictures around a little bit, but what they both have is Chun created a pattern. There's a pattern on the left-hand side on the bottom where you can see there's a figures that show a pattern. They duplicated that pattern in their instructions, and they had to, because that's the way you use the product. And if they didn't do that, it would be incomplete, and they wouldn't have the benefit of the popularity of the product. So that's there. And then we go back to, so now we've got, so another problem that we had, and again, our efforts are, there's fine, once we have patents, you can sue people. That's one way to do it. But our efforts were really, let's stop this stuff from coming into the country. That was our focus. So we were looking for alternate ways outside of litigation to stop these things from coming into the country. So we use the Border Patrol agents, we use the government agencies that are there to help us do that. But then we also use the private entities, these big box retailers, Amazon, Etsy, Alibaba. They had to put together some type of a IP enforcement scheme because they were getting flack from all over the place that they were encouraging infringers. So each one of these places, websites, particularly Amazon here, they have an IP enforcement process where you could submit your registered IP and they'll take things down. This is a version of what Amazon is. There's Alibaba, DHgate, all of these large online resellers where these are the kind of the resellers that would maybe sell to like a mom and pop dollar store, where they would go and buy a couple hundred infringing looms and put those in the store. So if we could stop that, we could stop a lot of things. So we got into a habit or a system where every few days we would go through the listings and file to have these taken down, and they would get taken down. But more often than not, 2 days later, another group would be up, another batch of this type of things would go up. And at the time, we were having a couple associates do this. They would visit these websites on a daily, bi-daily, weekly basis and submit the takedown requests as appropriate. But it was just getting expensive for the client, and it just wasn't. We weren't getting the results that we needed fast enough. We were getting results, but so then we found that there are companies that do this. They've created algorithms where not only, so instead of having a person search Amazon and Etsy and all these various websites, they have algorithms that go out and search the internet for places that are selling things. And they would and then they would use each of those websites own, like the Alibaba website or the Amazon website, they use those procedures to get these things taken down. These are a couple names that we use for a little while when things were at their hottest, when we were taking down the most things that we could take down. Chun now he has another service, and he still does some things on his own, but this was a very good resource. And again, the whole point was, if we can stop the sales, whatever we can do to stop the sales, no, we're not going to get damages, but we're going to stop the sales, stop some of the infringement before it even starts. So that's where we were outside of patent litigation. And Ted's going to talk about the patents and how we proceeded once we got into that realm of enforcement. And I think Ted's coming in a minute. Any questions while I'm, oh, there we go.
I was here.
Yeah.
I was listening. Anyway, so yeah, so I remember, like the depth of our sort of despair was when I see this commercial when I'm trying to work off some stress. One of the cool things, though, is once these efforts and the customs efforts started kicking in, is we would come in the morning to work and turn on our computers, and we'd have email. I just remember from Europe and Asia, of people reporting on just tens of thousands of seized products. And one of the things that's really good is the really worst infringers, the garbage stuff and the counterfeits, the people you're challenging are not going to show up and say their product is okay. They're not going to show up in court. They're not going to show that Customs has the ability to challenge a seizure. None of these companies are going to show up, other than those New Jersey companies. No one really stood up in any of this, and so we were really able to limit how much was going on. And the other thing I forgot to mention is at one point, Chun was saying, "How is all this stuff going on? Like I'm just like completely crazy about it." And I came up with this thing where I said, "Chun, if you walk down Canal Street in New York City, you're going to be offered Coach handbags by two dozen different stores, and they're all counterfeit. And Coach probably has like 100 people trying to seize counterfeit stuff. I mean, when they really kick into trying to flood with knockoffs of popular products, it is very, very hard to stop it all. It's perhaps not even possible. Anyway, so but the other thing about all of that, is that you don't get money from customs seizures, and with the patents, you can get some money back. And so we had two main patents. The first patent was an earlier one, and if you read the patent claim, there's at least one pin bar supported on a base. And then claim 9 says there's a clip. Remember, I showed you the clip to secure the ends of the bracelet. There's a clip in claim 9. Claim 12 is a method of making a rubber band bracelet, basically. There's a second patent that was also of issue. The second patent didn't issue until 2014. And as I say, this was the hottest product, or toy at least, in the United States in 2013. Christmas 2013, it was insane. You couldn't find it anywhere. 2014, the second patent issued. So the second patent is covering a little bit smaller amount of infringement. You want to go to the next one, John, or is this is the next one? I'm sorry. No, go back. I'm sorry. So this one, we had rows of offset pins. We still have a plurality of pins supported on a base. Then the next one. So the three in New Jersey companies, once we sued them, they filed what are called IPRs, which are basically things that started up, I think around 2012, 2011 timeframe. They're ways that patent litigation used to be, you would sue a company, and then 4 years later, there'd be an answer on whether your patent was valid and infringed. But they created a new animal in about 2011, 2012 timeframe called an IPR, inter partes reexamination. And it was killing a lot of patents back in that timeframe. And so that became the standard thing. You'd sue somebody, they would file an IPR trying to have your patent challenged. The next one, John. Now, the main piece of prior evidence that they came up with were knitting looms, hand knitting looms, which have rows of pins. And the next one, John. So if you look at it, this claim 1 in the first patent, there's a kit for creating an item consisting of a series of links. There's a base, there's a pin bar, there's a plurality of pins with a flared top. Well, that knitting loom had all of that. But claim 9, including a clip, there's no reason to have a clip for a piece of knitted fabric. You would need to stitch it together. You can't just have like a tiny clip that's securing two ends of a sweater. It doesn't make any sense. And again, I mentioned earlier, my wife was a textile engineer, which really helped us out because she helped me build up arguments on knitting and weaving but we saw, I'm assuming you guys know basically what an IPR is. We saw on the first patent 4 IPRs filed across those 3 different companies. And the very first one was put into place with regard to claim 1. However, it wasn't enacted as regard to claim 9 because we convinced the patent office that there'd be no reason to have a clip with a knitting loom. And once we got that decision, we just stepped out of the fight because we said Christmas 2013 was coming up. We needed to be able to go after and stop stuff. So we kind of just said, fine, claim 1's dead. We don't need claim 1. We got claim 9, and they're all infringing that also. On the second one, we got, I believe, 3 IPRs, one from each of the companies. The first 2 were denied, but the third one went the distance, and we ended up winning based upon an argument that John put together along with Chun that carried the day. The thing that we learned, I mean, a lot of independent inventors talk about IPRs as just making it impossible to be an independent inventor. Chun had enough success that he could afford it, but we're a Midwest law firm. Our rates are not New York rates. They're not DC rates. So we were able to put these challenges, or fight these challenges, a little more economically than other firms might have been. But we also came up with a way of doing it, which was to basically pick our fights. We don't need to win on every claim. We just need to win on one patent claim. And so we would narrow down what we were going to fight with once we would get one of these IPRs. And then we would go hard to get it denied in the first place. And as I say, we were pretty successful on that. Next one, John. Now, these companies, they are good at what they do. They each take on maybe 3 dozen products every year. There's actually, if you read, actually, I'll get to that in a minute, but they're very good at design. They don't care to settle. Judges are taught no reasonable businessman wants to be in a patent lawsuit. So judges assume that a defendant and the plaintiff are wanting to be reasonable and get out of a patent lawsuit. These companies are always in patent lawsuits. It's part of their business plan. They don't care. And so the judge's efforts, the judge's normal things that move a case towards settling don't apply to them. They're good at delay, and that's all they try and do. They try and delay to the point where the product's no longer hot and it's no longer worth spending the money to continue fighting the lawsuit. And again, the main issue here was one piece versus multi-piece. We said the patent covered one piece as well as multi-piece. All 3 of them were making the argument they did not. Next one, John. Eventually, on that issue, we lost at the Patent Court of Appeals, the Federal Circuit. They held that, at least on the earlier patent, that it only covers multi-piece designs. But before that happened, we had settled with one of the big infringers on both patents. We'd settled with one of the big infringers on one of the 2 patents. And then we lost on that second infringer, and we lost on the second patent, and we lost with the third infringer on both patents, which means, we won 500. We were batting 500 essentially, which, given the nature of the enemy here and the fact that they all ganged up on us, I think that's a pretty good batting average. And excuse me, the other lesson from here is we were careful. Go to the next one, Jen. To keep continuation applications pending. So once we saw what their arguments would be, we came back with the patent claims that most clearly did not require the multi-piece design. So there are now patents in place that would cover a single piece loom. And what we're starting to see, or what Chun was starting to see beginning with the beginning of lockdown for COVID, is kids are starting to get back into this. People are starting to get back into this. There's a lot of craft time, there's a lot of downtime, and his sales are picking back up after a few years of being pretty low. So these are really helpful. I mean, and it's important to if you've got a product that you're interested in, don't just accept your first patent. Before it issues, file a continuation, because once you see arguments, and there's always going to be arguments. In my career, I don't know how many patent lawsuits I've been involved in, but every single one of them, the defendant had a non-infringement and an invalidity argument. So if you can have a continuation pending, you can address those a little more effectively. If you look, claim 1 here is a method of creating a linked item. It's a method of making a rubber band bracelet. This is in that follow-up patent, so it doesn't require the multi-piece. Now, a lot of times patent attorneys will say, well, there's no point in having a method of using the machine or the loom here, because who's infringing it are these 13-year-old and 14-year-old kids who are making the bracelet. But if you go to the next one, John, that's not the case here, because all of these companies, these TV companies, one of them is Idea Village. Idea Village is the fun room. And Idea Village, there was a Harvard Business School study of Idea Village and how it gets to the idea, or to the decision to put out a product. It doesn't say knock off someone else's product, but trust me, that the product they're talking about in this had to have been someone else's product. And once they get to that idea, they have a script in place that they do. And if you look at to the right, here's your classic TV commercial script. Go back, John. So if you look at part 4, demo the product repeatedly in clear, high impact ways. So they show it in the commercial being used, because no one knows how to use these things. You know, something new, no one's going to know how to use. So each of the commercials for each of the 3 companies on their version of the rainbow loom had a person making a rubber band bracelet with their own loom. Now, that meant that film, that commercial, infringed the method claim. And that's the company that is paying someone to infringe that method claim. So that method claim that I showed you a minute ago of how to make a rubber band bracelet, it wasn't just being infringed by 13-year-old and 14-year-old kids. It was infringed by the very companies, and they needed it. Things like this Harvard business study make clear the commercial is an integral part. They wouldn't be selling things. They wouldn't be at the front of Walmart without those commercials. So when you get your patents on something that might be a consumer item, think about having a claim to how you use it. Because if these companies are going to get into the way of knocking you off, they're going to have to make a commercial. And if they make a commercial, you've got an argument that they're infringing your method of making claims. Next one, John. On the garbage stuff, we really couldn't sue them practically for patent infringement. We started trying to sue some of the people that were offering it, but they always had a volume of 3,000 or 1,000, and there just wasn't the money there didn't support having a patent lawsuit. But we bought some from different companies, and we got them to agree to, well, we released them from a lawsuit by getting them to tell us where they got them from. The other thing, next one, John, you remember John showed those custom seizure things. Well, they have the address of who's buying them and who sent them in. So we got the names of some of the bigger importers in the United States, and we were able to sue a couple of them. Next one, John. Like, do you remember the really bad one with the hands on it? So this is from a store, which is sort of a smaller East Coast version of Michael's, called AC Moore. You probably might have them in Connecticut for that matter, but AC Moore was selling this version, which is the easiest one to sue because it's not only patents, it's also copyrights because of the hand. And so we sued AC Moore. We got a decent settlement with them. We also found an importer of a lot of the garbage from that lawsuit was a company called Midwest Trading, which is in Chicago, and we sued them, and we got a very favorable settlement from them also. Between the 1.5 settlements we got from the New Jersey companies and those settlements, really, it more than paid for everything Chun did with regard to intellectual property, and put some money in his pocket in addition to that. You know, and again, a lot of what we're trying to do is simply prevent as much as we could of the knockoff products taking sales from him. Next one, John. You remember I said there are kiosks all around the country. There was no way to sue them. I mean, you would have to go to a local judge. You'd have to get an order that allows you to seize the stuff. Then you'd have to hire a federal marshal for the day to go seize it. And by the time you do all that, to seize a couple hundred looms just didn't make practical sense. But we wrote letters to basically every mall in the country, letting them know that they were selling infringing stuff. And there are enough ethical mall owners, I suppose, that that a lot of them got shut down. The thing that we did do with regard to the garbage stuff, and next one, John, we eventually came up with something called an ITC action. And an ITC action is sort of a customs related enforcement, but it's on patents. It's not on trademarks or copyrights. And we sued generally all of the multi-piece stuff, all of the garbage stuff. We didn't bring in the New Jersey companies because in an ITC, you can't get damages. You can only get stuff stopped. And we wanted money from the New Jersey companies. They were collectible, but the garbage stuff, we weren't going to get any money out of them anyway. And besides, and we also knew the garbage stuff were not going to show up and fight. We sued and we got an order that excludes, for the life of the patents, all of that junk stuff from getting into the border. So customs will stop all of that. And if you remember, John talked about Amazon and Alibaba and the others having, you have the ability to ask them to take stuff down. Well, this ITC, they trust this ITC thing also. So this also helps us get takedown on all of those kind of web pages. So that's what we did with the patent side of this. And John's going to talk about some things Chun did early on that put him in a position to have as much success as he did have in stopping stuff.
Thanks, Ted. Right. So this really is just a short timeline of how things happened and when. And the one thing that Chun was very cognizant of when he developed this product is he understood that in the end, it's a piece of plastic. And he understood that anybody who can measure things, once it's out there, it's going to be something that's easy to copy. He spent a lot of time getting all the pin sizes just right and the opening sizes just right and the flanges and all the type. But once that was done and all someone had to do was take a set of calipers and measure the parts, it was going to be very easy for somebody to copy. So he understood that, and we filed a provisional patent application early on before he had made his initial investment. And that was in November of 2010. 2-3 years before the success really hit. And then he had the further kind of wherewithal to understand that at the end of the 1 year, we filed a utility application. So that's 2011. But he also understood that the extra cost for a PCT application, so that he could file the patents worldwide, was going to be useful because he had a good feeling. He had a lot of kind of anecdotal success with the kids in the neighborhood to have an understanding that this was going to be a good product and that it was going to be worthwhile. So those two things, the provisional application and then the insight to follow up and file a PCT application, were extremely useful and extremely helpful down the road. Filed the non-provisional, and that was granted in July of 2013. By July of 2013, Chun the original name of this was Twisty Bands, and the name Twisty Bands didn't do so great, and so he changed the box, and he came up with the name of Rainbow Loop. And that was sometime around 2012. Well, the name Rainbow Loom stuck and the new packaging stuck. And so about midway through 2012, the Rainbow Loop craze started. It started in the Learning Express stores. It started with kids. The kids were making them for adults, and it was everywhere. So the reason that's important is if he would have not kind of understood that he needs protection until he was successful, if we would have filed things in 2012 and then had a 2-year lag, we wouldn't have had anything to enforce anything with. We've been out of luck. But we had those things. We had the patents, and we recognized that we kept continuations pending. We filed for the trademarks and the copyrights as we went through. And then as the infringement picked up and we started seeing things worldwide, we filed the ITC action in July of 2014, which matured. Now the ITC action is something they try and get everything done within 1 year from the filing date. So when you're ready and you file an ITC action, that can be something that's very powerful, and it does happen very quickly. So that's kind of, this is the timeline that kind of shows. So by 2016, the fad had kind of leveled out, but you can see all the things that happened in such a very short period of time. That the basic filings early on helped us to have the tools that we needed and can use throughout. So from our experience, we learned a few lessons pretty quick. Early file provisional, which was key. Recognizing your part. Once you have your device or your invention, take a look at it from an infringer's point of view. How easy is it for somebody to make your product? Just picking it up, buying it off the shelf, and then taking it home. And is it something that if it is, and you understand that, then that gives you a better understanding of what to file, where to file, and how soon to file. Use the other intellectual property. I mean, patents are kind of known, but use trademarks and copyrights can be very, very powerful to stop things. Don't discount those, especially a trademark, especially if you think that somebody is going to want to take advantage of the name recognition that you've made built up in the product. Take advantage of those things. And then maybe think about it. I know at the beginning when your product's first starting, maybe you don't think about what to do if things happen worldwide. But maybe there's still some things that you can do that put you in a place to take it to protect it worldwide, if you've got any inkling that might happen. So what we do now, after everything we've learned and kind of as we've understood now, Chun's got a good understanding of what his markets are. So we've developed a strategy which I think can be tailored to anybody's parts and business. Is file applications early. Once you know that you've got a product and you've got it mostly developed and to reasonable, file the applications early to give you an opportunity to stop people when your success hits. File in. You don't necessarily need to file worldwide, but if you know which markets you're going to be in, Europe, for instance, like Europe and Japan, along with the U.S., just focus on those markets. The other thing we learn working with people worldwide is there's other types of applications besides the typical utility patents or design patents. Some countries have utility model applications, which they're smaller patents. There's less involved in obtaining those patents, and they can be obtained fairly quickly, and they give you some protection quick. There were a lot of countries where the product would be introduced. He would have a distributor online in that country, but we didn't have intellectual property. But we did have a PCT application, which gave us the ability to file in those countries, and we could file things like these utility model patents or to get some protection quickly. So I guess the idea there is once you understand your market, take advantage of the other intellectual property types that they have in that particular market. I know China has utility model patents. Some European countries do. Those are great things to take advantage of. They lower the cost of getting intellectual property, and they still give you some viable coverage very quickly. Don't discount copyrights. Copyright the packaging. That can be helpful against those those infringers that are just blatantly copying your product. It's a very, very powerful type thing. And then also take advantage of the customs agencies around the world, especially the U.S. government. They were great to work with. They have a vested interest, and the border protection agents that deal in intellectual property, they want to stop this stuff. They want to stop infringers. You just need to be able to give them the tools to do it. And with that, I'll stop there and ask if anybody has any questions. Ted and I will be happy to answer them.
There's some questions in chat, John.
Oh, is there? Okay.
And Charles. So does it pay to file for trademark in China? I'm going to leave that question for last. starting, I'm going to go down to this last one. The PCT covers the EU and Australia. PCT basically covers, it's sort of a right to file a patent application at a later date, pretty much in every country in the world. The things that are excluded are the countries, like I don't believe Taiwan is in it because China, China won't let them be in it. And China wouldn't agree to be in the PCT if Taiwan is in it. But for the most part, it preserves the right to file everywhere. Charles also asks, what about the value of filing for Canada? Why not the EU? Well, Chun did both. The EU was definitely a very important place to file trademarks and patents. At the end of the day, we have a license in Europe, and we were able to seize a lot of stuff from the European customs because of the European trademark. Doug also asked now, do patents in China work? Okay, I'm gonna get a little politically incorrect here for a minute. We normally have not done a lot of work before this. I mean, we're now experts, I believe, in consumer products and this kind of stuff. In fact, we've had a couple of, our firm has had a couple of other really hot products since the Chun stuff hit. But at the time, all this was going on, we weren't necessarily skilled in stopping stuff in China. And so we consulted with someone who styled themselves an expert, and they gave us all kinds of advice. We did file for trademark applications in China. And I don't mean this in a political way, but like all of the Facebook stuff about Melania Trump, or whatever her name is, Trump, the daughter, that there was a sweetheart trade deal with China because they got trademarks. I can get you a trademark in China if you give me $1,000. What you need to do is get one enforced. If any of her trademarks were ever enforced in China, that would be something that shows something. As near as I can tell, the main enforcement in China was when they had the Olympics there in 2008, and the government owned the trademarks. They started seizing stuff and really started, enforcing things. We had a lot of problems getting anything enforced in China. Do patents in China work? They're not that expensive. It's probably worth doing it, but I don't think you're going to necessarily have a lot of success. But as to the trademark in China, the other problem that we had is we filed early on for a trademark in China. But as I say, you will get, and we did get a trademark for Rainbow Loom in China, but it takes 3 years. And there's no way you can speed it up. And so all of this time when it was really just crazy with counterfeits and all of these knockoffs, we didn't have the trademark registration yet. So we really couldn't enforce it. And that's a problem with Chinese trademarks. I mean, you really maybe it'll get better next year. So, and it's not that expensive, as I say, so you probably want to invest if you've got the ability to get some stuff in China, but it didn't do a whole heck of a lot of good for Chun on these things. I mean, John, do you agree?
I agree, but the one thing that I can say about that is it is worthwhile. We should have, paid more attention and filed in China, but because other people were filing for his trademark and for his patents.
Yeah,
so
the counterfeiters.
The people that counterfeited that cool Rainbow Loom, but they had actually filed patent applications for parts of the Rainbow Loom things. So even if the only reason you're filing patents and trademarks in China is so that other people aren't filing them and they're not getting priority dates for Chinese copyright, intellectual property for your stuff, that alone is probably a good enough reason to file in China.
Yeah, it's the Old West. I mean, it's really crazy. And just to clarify what I said about Facebook memes about Ivanka, that's her name, Ivanka Trump. That's not saying I support Trump or I don't support Trump. I'm just saying those particular memes were nonsense. That you don't need to give a sweetheart trade deal to get a Chinese trademark. Yeah, we can get you one. And I have no ability to influence trade deals. So anyway, so anyone else have any questions? That we're happy to hang around and answer questions. We're also happy if you come up with questions tomorrow to take a phone call from you. We don't turn on a clock or anything.
Unplug it, obviously. And then was there anything that was obvious where the cable from the monitor comes in or plug in that you could just disconnect it and reconnect it, just see if that?
I'm sorry, I didn't really catch the question.
So I've got an extra laptop here, so why don't I just come out and give it to you?
Who's talking?
All right, so I bought one for myself. So let me just, guess I will get that one. Yeah, I really haven't loaded much on it because I wasn't crazy about the red pointer thing. It just wasn't as fast a response. What do you use that?
I'm sorry, who's talking? It is we really can't.
They know they're on the air.
Maybe we should use the chat. It seems like the audio is not working very well on whoever is asking the question.
Yeah, I'll answer a couple of questions in the meantime. iPad to everyone. What database did you use to keep your team informed of all of your actions? Well, one thing that's different with a smaller Midwest law firm as opposed to New York City or Washington, D.C. law firms is our team was small enough that we were all, we were all informed of everything that was going on. And so, we would all be copying on everything. I forget the name of our, John, do you recall what we used to if for discovery, I mean, one of the standard systems that people use to handle discovery, although the reality is when you're dealing with those New Jersey firms, they stonewall so much that there should have been millions of documents, but they just don't give you much of what they've got. I mean, you pretty much got to go on your own. Taiwan does have its own patent system, and you can go separately there. Once a US patent has expired, it can be enforced against sales that happened before it expired, but once it's expired, you can't use it anymore. Is a trademark easier to enforce? Define easier, right? The sophisticated companies didn't infringe the trademark. They had enough sense to come up with a different name, and there were no rainbows on their product. But certainly, if you have a trade as against the people that were taking rainbows, it's easier to enforce against them. But the more sophisticated companies aren't going to do that. Trademarks do not expire. To Doug, we never had a court ruling. We had some settlements and we lost. We had settlements on 1.5 cases and we lost on 1.5 cases. I don't think we would have got triple damages because the companies we were suing, although we did settle with 2 or 3 smaller companies also, we might have gotten triple damages if we had gone against the people infringing the garbage or bringing in the garbage stuff, because there was no question they knew they were infringing. But the New Jersey companies at least make an effort to have an argument they're not infringing. If the New Jersey companies are infringing as a business plan, is the FTC going after them? Did you report them? No, we didn't. And I haven't seen a business plan that says that. I can just tell you, if you Google the company's names, Google New Jersey direct to market TV or direct, what are they called?
Direct marketing company. Yeah.
As seen on TV. Yeah.
As seen on TV. Google the company's names and then go on to Pacer and search how many patent infringement lawsuits they have at any one time.
As seen on TV is often the term used for telebrands. which
Right.
is
Right.
the Mark
No.
Weinstein company that comes out of Elmsford. And I don't think they're the ones that are knocking people off. That's a different firm, I think.
I think
Okay.
Telebrand's knocked off a bunch of balloons.
Or maybe it was Telebrands. What was Mark Weinstein's company? I forget.
Bunch of, you know about the bunch of balloons lawsuit. You got-
Yeah, that's right. That
Was that
was
Telebrands?
Telebrand did
I
it.
think that was Telebrand.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he's good friends with Chun. There was one company that started it off, and then they all kind of spun off, and a lot of them are related. There was a company, and then like one of the owner's brothers started his own company, and then one of the companies we were suing was something like that, but one of the other companies was the general manager from one of these companies started his own company, and they're humongous. We were at a settlement meeting in one of these companies in New Jersey, TriStar. They have this facility that's amazing. It's like a Hollywood studio. They make their own commercials there. They've got it all together. There are people whose entire job is to just surf social media and find out what seems to be popular. And they got teeth, man.
Very
These companies,
successful at it, yeah.
I wish I had that skill. Find out what's popular.
yeah.
I mean,
But you know, on the other hand, there's nothing wrong with looking at what's popular. There's nothing illegal about looking at what's popular and coming up with your own version of it,
Right.
as long as you avoid intellectual property. And as I say, they have arguments that they do. Sometimes they lose, and sometimes they don't. So anyway, I think the lesson is simply, you know, you got to try and get
Yes,
some stuff
I'll
going
call you
on
back.
early.
I'll call you back.
You've got to get some stuff early on that puts you in a position to stop as much as you can. I mean, as it turned out, you know, Chun did those steps, and he didn't have the $8,000 he had originally. He would have had some trouble putting his two daughters through the University of Michigan. But by the time his daughters got to the University of Michigan, he didn't have problems with his tuition payments.
yeah, good for him. That's great. Good story.
And yes, Charles, yeah, you have to file your continuation before the patent issues. There's some other things you can do if you filed a PCT, but for the most part, a continuation, once the patent issues, it's too late. Anything else? You all, you know, we're cgolaw.com. Feel free to look us up, call us if you have any questions. You know, we're more than happy to answer stuff. We love working with independent inventors and trying to help people out.
Well, I'd like to thank the speakers. I hope everyone will join me in thanking them. Both Ted and John did a great job today. Thank you. And for next month, we've got Mary Howard of Design Technologies, LLC. And she's going to do a presentation for us. And hopefully I'll see you guys all there. And everybody, thanks again. Have a good evening.
Thank you all.
Good night.
All right,
Bye.
thanks.
Bye. Thanks for your attention.